I lived as the son of a Chicago real estate tycoon for 18 years. Then the real heir showed up, told me I was a fraud, and that I should go crawl back to the gutter where I belonged. My adoptive parents threw me out without a second thought. So I went to the gutter, looking at the broken, hollowed-out faces around me. I pulled out the last of my money. "Work with me," I said. "I'll show you how to turn this city's garbage into gold." They thought I was insane. The rain was coming down in sheets, like the sky had cracked open. I stood on the stone steps of the Reed family's Kenilworth mansion, my dress shoes soaked through. My single suitcase sat at my feet, a solitary island in the deluge. Caleb Reed walked out the front door, holding a large black umbrella that shielded him completely. The runoff cascaded from the edges, splashing onto my already drenched pants. He was smiling, the smug, unapologetic smile of a victor. "Ethan, oh wait, you don't get to use that last name anymore, do you? Ethan Vance. You should go back to your gutter." His voice was soft, but each word was a stiletto jab. I lifted my head, peering through the rain at the mansion behind him. My adoptive father, Robert Reed, and my adoptive mother, Eleanor, stood just inside the floor-to-ceiling windows, their faces blank. 18 years. I had been their son for 18 years. Top of my class at Northwestern's Kellogg School of Management every semester. The youngest project lead in the history of Reed Properties. The perfect heir, as they had so often called me. Now, a single DNA test had turned it all into a joke. Caleb was their biological son, and I was the son of a homeless junkie. The heavy oak door opened again. My adoptive father stepped out, holding a debit card. "Ethan, there's $100,000 on this," he said, his voice as calm and steady as if he were closing a business deal. "Take it. As of today, you and the Reed family are square." I stared at him, at the man I had called Dad for 18 years. He taught me about leverage and acquisitions, how to ride a horse, how to be a shark in a boardroom. Now he was teaching me that blood is thicker than water. "I don't want it," I said, my voice cracking. Eleanor Reed came out, her eyes a little red, but she quickly looked away. "Ethan, don't make this difficult," she said. "Caleb suffered for 18 years out there. We have to make it up to him. Your things are packed. The staff will bring them down. Make it up to him by sacrificing me." The logic was clean, efficient, and brutal, spoken like a true Reed. Caleb walked over and shoved a crumpled piece of paper into my hand. "Under the Kennedy Expressway, third support column from the west," he sneered. "Your birth parents are long dead, but I hear some of your brothers and sisters are still there. Have fun catching up." He was shaking with laughter. I clenched the piece of paper, my nails digging into my palm. As I turned and walked into the rain, I heard Caleb shout after me, "Oh, and by the way, I'll be sure to let all your friends from Kellogg know. They'll be fascinated to learn the business prodigy they all admired is really just the son of a bum." I didn't look back. The rain fell harder. The 2-hour train ride and walk took me the rest of the afternoon. The underpass was worse than I could have imagined. Filthy water trickled in rivulets on the ground, and the air was thick with the stench of urine and decay. 5 or 6 people were huddled in the shadows, wrapped in ragged blankets, looking like discarded bundles of laundry. An old man with stringy, gray hair looked up at me. "You new here?" I handed him the note. He glanced at it and let out a short, harsh laugh. "That kid, Caleb, finally hit the jackpot, and he still remembers us." I met on. There was a stir among the others. A middle-aged man with a thick scar across his face sat up, looking me up and down. "The one they swapped at the hospital?" I nodded. The scar man grinned, showing yellowed teeth. "So you're the rich kid, huh? Got any cash?" The others started to close in, their eyes glinting with a desperate greed. "I have nothing," I said. "They kicked me out. I'm just like you now." Disappointment washed over their faces. "TCH, just another broke loser," someone mumbled, shuffling back to their corner. I found a spot at the edge of the encampment and sat down, placing my suitcase beside me. That night, the cold wind whipped through the underpass, making my teeth chatter. The sound of snoring mixed with the constant roar of traffic overhead. I couldn't sleep. The day's events played on a loop in my mind. Caleb's triumphant smirk. My adoptive parents' cold, distant eyes. In the words of my faculty advisor last month, "Ethan, you have the most natural business instincts of any student I've ever taught. Bar none." Instincts? Could my instincts keep me from freezing to death tonight? As dawn approached, a thought sparked in my mind. What if I really am a business prodigy? What if I really do understand how people work? Then isn't this disaster just another kind of opportunity? I looked at the people sprawled around me. They weren't assets. Not yet, but they could be. Chapter 2, I woke to the sound of shouting. Two young men were fighting over a half-eaten, stale bagel. The others either watched for entertainment or placed bets. The man with the scar even started taking odds. I got $5 on the skinny one. Any takers? No one intervened. No one cared. Just like the Reeds didn't care if I lived or died. I stood up and walked into the middle of them. Stop it. The two fighters paused, looking at me with confusion. Who the hell are you to tell us what to do? I'm Ethan, the new guy, I said. But I have a question. Does beating each other bloody get you any more food? The underpass fell silent for a moment. Then, a wave of bitter laughter. What's the alternative? Starve to death. A man as thin as a rail shot back. Why not try a different way of living? I asked. Like what? Robbing a bank. Robbing a bank is illegal, I said, looking from face to face. But collecting recyclables isn't. This city generates thousands of tons of waste every day. Do you know how much of that is worth money? You all pick up cans and bottles, but why not do it systematically? The scarred man narrowed his eyes. What do you know about it, kid? The recycling centers rip us off. You work all day for less than a pack of smokes. That's because you're all lone wolves, I said. If we worked together, centralized collection, sorting, and sales, we'd have negotiating power. Easier said than done. The old, gray-haired man scoffed. Who's going to organize it? You. Yes, I am. My voice was firm. They all stared, stunned into silence. My name is Ethan Vance, the fake heir kicked out by the Reed family. But I was also #1 in my class at Kellogg for 4 straight years. I've been part of 6 startup projects, and all of them turn a profit. Give me 1 month. I can triple your daily income. Believe me or don't. A long silence followed. The scarred man was the first to speak. What's the split? I take 30%, you split 70, I said. But I need absolute authority to run things. Why should we trust you? A middle-aged woman asked. I opened my suitcase and pulled out my laptop. It was mine, something the Reeds hadn't taken. I booted it up and showed them my transcripts and project portfolios. That stuff can be faked, the old man said. What about this? I opened my mobile banking app. The balance showed $86,000. It was my scholarship money and internship savings. I'll front the seed money. If this fails, we split whatever's left. Money. It's always the most persuasive argument. After a morning of arguing, 5 of the 7 people under the bridge agreed to give it a shot. The scar man's name was Mitch Kowalski. He used to be a construction foreman before a workplace injury got him fired. The middle-aged woman was Brenda Mays. She'd escaped an abusive husband. The old man just went by Pops. No one knew his real name. And the 2 younger ones, Leo and Maya, were kids from a small town who'd been scammed out of their money. My first team was assembled. Chapter 3, the first week, was a complete bust. Mitch introduced me to a few recycling center owners. The second they saw who we were, a bunch of homeless people, they offered us half the market rate. Take it or leave it, a bald owner said, a cigarette dangling from his lips. I turned and walked out. Ethan, this isn't going to work, Mitch said, catching up to me. We don't have any other options. Who says we don't? I opened Google Maps on my phone. There are 27 recycling centers in this city. We've only been to 3. We spent the next 4 days crisscrossing Chicago. The results were demoralizing. The big centers didn't want our small volume, and the small ones lowballed us relentlessly. Cracks started to form in the team. I knew it was a stupid idea. Pops grumbled, squatting by the underpass. People like us don't get second chances. Brenda started murmuring too. Are we really sure he's going to split that 86 grand? Only Leo and Maya stuck by me, but they were too young and quiet to have any influence. On the 5th night, I couldn't sleep. I had never experienced this kind of failure. At Kellogg, I was a prodigy. With the Reeds, I was the perfect heir. Now, I couldn't even convince a handful of homeless people to trust me. At 3 a.m., I got up and started researching online. Suddenly, I saw a news release. Terra Nova Solutions, the city's largest environmental corporation, was accepting bids for a new citywide recycling pilot program. The deadline was in 2 weeks. Bidders needed an innovative collection model and a strong community foundation. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. We didn't have a company, credentials, or capital. But we had a strong community foundation. We were the foundation, the very bottom. And as for an innovative model, an idea was already taking shape in my head. At dawn, I woke everyone up. I have a new plan, I said, my eyes bright. But it requires your total commitment, and we might not make a dime for the next 2 weeks. Are you crazy? Pops was the first to object. Mitch stared at me. Explain. I spent half an hour laying out the bidding plan. He's lost his mind. Completely insane, Pops said, shaking his head. A bunch of bums bidding on a major corporate contract? It's because we're bums that we have an advantage, I insisted. We know this city's garbage better than anyone. If we win, Terra Nova will provide the equipment, the funding, and the legal status. We'll go from being a ragtag crew to a legitimate operation. Silence. Brenda was the first to raise her hand. I'm in, she said, her eyes resolute. My daughter starts school soon. I need the money. Leo and Maya raised their hands too. Mitch took a long drag from his third cigarette and nodded. Pops looked around at everyone, then let out a long sigh. All right, Fine. I'll go along with this crazy scheme. And just like that, we began 2 weeks of frantic preparation. Chapter 4, putting together a corporate proposal, was harder than I imagined. We didn't even have a place to work. I ended up renting an abandoned warehouse on the south side for $900 a month, paying for 3 months with my savings. The roof leaked, and there was no electricity. We worked by candlelight. I wrote the proposal, while Mitch drew maps of the city's waste distribution from memory. Brenda, Leo, and Maya went out to do field work, documenting the types and quantities of recyclables in different neighborhoods. Pops handled logistics, using my dwindling funds to buy day-old bread and ramen noodles. On the 7th day, we hit a wall. Terra Nova required proof of team credentials. What credentials did we have? We could fake them, Maya suggested quietly. No, if they find out we're finished. I shot down the idea. After a sleepless night, I made a risky decision. I went directly to the Terra Nova Solutions headquarters downtown. The receptionist looked at my worn clothes with undisguised contempt. Do you have an appointment? No, but I need to see the person in charge of the pilot program bid. He's a very busy man. Please tell him I have a proposal that can increase the city's recycling efficiency by 35%. And if he doesn't see me, Terra Nova will miss out on the most innovative project of the year. The receptionist was skeptical, but made the call. Half an hour later, I was shown into a conference room. The bid manager was a man in his 40s named David Chun. He wore a sharp suit and had an even sharper gaze. You claim you can increase efficiency by 35%, he asked, getting straight to the point. Where's your proof? I slid the preliminary draft of my proposal across the table. He flipped through it, his expression shifting from doubt to genuine interest. This is interesting, he said, closing the folder. But where's your team? You can't do this alone. My team is in the field, I said. They're collecting data as we speak. I want to meet them, Chin said, standing up. Now, my stomach dropped. Mitch and the others were probably at a garbage dump on the far south side, covered in filth. But I was in too deep to back out now. I called Mitch and told them to meet me at a nearby park as fast as they could. An hour later, we met. They had come straight from sorting through refuse. Their clothes were dirty and their hands were stained. When David Chin saw them, his brow furrowed. This is your team? Yes, I said, standing tall. They know more about this city's waste than anyone. Mr. Chun, do any of the researchers in your office towers have first-hand experience sorting tens of thousands of plastic bottles? Does anyone on your payroll know which neighborhoods throw out the most electronics? Do they know the hidden corners where construction crews illegally dump their debris? Chun was silent. He looked at each of them in turn. Mitch, Brenda, Pops, Leo, and Maya. Why are you working for him? He asked them directly. Mitch wiped a grimy hand on his pants. Because he promised us a way out. Brenda added, I trust him. He could have taken his money and run, but he stayed. Pops just mumbled, couldn't get any worse, could it? Chen's gaze returned to me, a complex expression on his face. You're Ethan Vance, aren't you? The Reed's adopted son. A jolt went through me. You know, it's a small town, a big city, Chun said vaguely. The story about the real and fake heirs got around. But I never imagined you'd end up doing this. He paused. Keep working on the proposal. I'll be paying special attention. As he left, Chen handed me his business card. Call me directly if you have any questions. Before getting into his car, he turned back. And for what it's worth, you've got a better eye for talent than the Reeds. They may have thrown away a diamond. The car pulled away. Mitch nudged me. What did he mean by that? I clutched the business card tightly. It means we got a fighting chance. Chapter 5, we barely slept for the last 3 days before the deadline. The warehouse was buried in paperwork. I used the last of my money to buy a second-hand printer. Maya handled the layout and design, while Leo ran errands. Mitch and Brenda continued gathering data, and Pops managed to get intel on the other bidders. We're up against 3 others, Pops reported. Metro Clean Industries, Regan Tech, and some new startup. Metro Clean is the favorite. I heard they've already greased the right palms. My heart sank. If the fix was already in, all our work was for nothing. But we had to see it through. The night before the bid was due, David Chin called. Ethan, there's a situation, he said, his voice grim. You have a man on your team named Mitch Kowalski? He glanced over at Mitch. Yes, what about him? He has a record. An assault charge from a bar fight years ago after his construction accident. Chin paused. Someone leaked that information to the review committee. My mind went blank. Will that affect our bid? It will, Chun said bluntly. Terra Nova is a publicly traded company. We can't afford negative PR. Unless what? Unless you can prove that your model will not only be profitable, but will also generate an overwhelmingly positive social impact. After the call, I told the team. Mitch's face went pale. I'm sorry. I'm dragging you all down, he said, standing up. I'll quit. Sit down. I said, my voice quiet but firm. We're a team. We sink or swim together. But no buts. I looked at everyone. Chin gave us our angle, social impact. What does that mean? Maya asked. It means we're not just in the business of recycling trash. We're in the business of recycling lives. My mind raced. We need a story that will move them. For the next 24 hours, we reworked the entire proposal. I added sections on a homeless to hire program, community environmental education, and model recycling hubs. Leo and Maya worked through the night, creating flyers and presentation slides. Brenda reached out to other women she knew in similar situations. Pops even convinced a few other men from the underpass to join our pilot team. On the day of the presentation, I put on my only suit. Mitch and the others insisted on coming with me. If we're going to go down, we go down together, Pops said with a gap-toothed grin. At Terra Nova's headquarters, we stuck out like a sore thumb. The other bidders were in tailored suits. We looked like we had wandered into the wrong building. The lead representative from Metro Clean saw us and laughed out loud. Look what the cat dragged in. They're letting any Tom, Dick, and Harry bid these days. His colleagues joined in the laughter. I ignored them. When it was our turn, the committee members looked bored. But when I plugged my USB drive into the laptop and the projector lit up, the atmosphere began to change. I didn't start with numbers. I started with Maya's story. A small-town girl who came to the big city, got cheated, and ended up on the streets, surviving on redeemed cans. Then Brenda, a survivor of domestic abuse, who fled her personal hell only to find herself homeless. Mitch, a hard-working foreman, disabled on the job and abandoned by his employer. Pops, a lonely old man forgotten by his children. One true story after another, accompanied by their photos. Some of the people on the committee were visibly moved. Then, I presented our plan. It wasn't just about how to recycle garbage, but about how to restore human dignity. Waste is what this city throws away. These people are who society has thrown away. My voice rang out, clear and strong. But trash can be recycled. And so can people. Terra Nova doesn't just want a return on investment. You want to create value for society. We can deliver both. When I finished, the room was quiet for several seconds. Then the chairman of the committee spoke. Mr. Vance, your proposal is certainly unique. But in practical terms, how can you guarantee the reliability of this workforce? We have a tiered training system, I said, clicking to the next slide. From basic sorting to machine operation and eventually management roles. And the capital? The initial investment is significant. We've run the numbers. With Terra Nova's equipment support, we can break even in 3 months and turn a profit in 6. The Q&A lasted for 40 minutes. As we left, The man from Metro Clean shot me a venomous look. Don't think you can win a contract by telling a few sob stories. Business isn't a charity. I met his gaze calmly. No, but business can have a conscience. That's something you'll never understand. On the way back to the warehouse, nobody spoke. When we arrived, Mitch finally broke the silence. Win or lose, what we did today, it was worth it. For the first time in years, I felt like a human being again. Brenda wiped her eyes. Leo and Maya held hands tightly. Pops, for the first time, pulled out a crumpled pack of cigarettes and offered one to everyone. Go on, have one. Let's celebrate not making fools of ourselves. I took one and lit it. The smoke made me cough, but the fire in my chest burned brighter than ever. Chapter 6: The winner would be announced in a week. We couldn't just sit and wait. I used my remaining money to rent a pickup truck, and the team started a small-scale trial. We set up temporary collection points in 3 neighborhoods, promising better rates than the recycling centers. The first day, only a few people showed up. The second day, a few more. By the third day, we had a line. We sorted everything meticulously, paid fair prices, and were scrupulously honest with our weights. Word began to spread. On the 4th afternoon, a familiar car pulled up to our makeshift depot. A silver Porsche. It was Caleb. He parked next to our truck, which was overflowing with bags of cans, the contrast jarring. The window rolled down. He wore sunglasses, a mocking smirk on his face. Ethan, I have to admit, I never thought you'd sink this low. I kept weighing a bag of plastic bottles, not looking at him. What do you want, Caleb? Just came to see the show, he said, getting out of the car. He winced as his designer shoes touched the grimy pavement. Heard you're bidding on the Terra Nova project. Don't waste your time. I put down the scales. You know about that? In this city, what don't I know? Caleb took off his sunglasses. The CEO of Metro Clean Industries is a friend of my father's. And just so you know, 2 of the people on that review committee had a very nice dinner courtesy of the Reed family. My stomach tightened, but I kept my face neutral. So you don't have a chance. Caleb stepped closer, lowering his voice. But if you get on your knees and beg, I might consider finding you a real job. We need a new security guard for the garage at the Reed Tower. Mitch started towards him, but I held up a hand to stop him. Caleb, do you know what our professors at Kellogg used to say about you? I asked calmly. His expression flickered. They said you had the right last name, but 0 business sense. You got in because of donation and barely passed a single class. You. And another thing, I continued. Do you know why the Reeds were so eager to bring you home? It wasn't love. It was your grandfather's will. Only a direct blood heir can inherit the controlling shares of the company. The color drained from Caleb's face. How did you know that? I'm not blind, and I'm not stupid. I picked up the scales again. Now, please leave. You're holding up my customers. Caleb stormed back to his car, peeling out with a squeal of tires. But his words left a dark cloud hanging over me. If he was telling the truth, all our work could be for nothing. That evening, I called David Shun. Caleb Reed, pay me a visit today, I said, getting straight to it. There was a pause on the other end. What did he say? He said Metro Clean has friends on the inside, that the committee is compromised. Another silence. Mr. Chun, I need to know the truth. Ethan, he finally said, I admire what you're doing, but Terra Nova isn't my company to run. The board is full of competing interests. However, he added, his tone shifting, that same gridlock might be your saving grace. What do you mean? Metro Clean is backed by Mr. Henderson on the board. But Mr. Peterson has been Henderson's rival for years. Chun lowered his voice. Your proposal landed on Peterson's desk. He's very interested. He could be your opening. After the call, I thought hard about what Chun had said. The battlefield of business isn't always about who has the better product. Sometimes it's about choosing the right allies. It looked like I needed to meet Mr. Peterson. Chapter 7 with David Chin's help, I got a meeting with Mr. Peterson. James Peterson, the 3rd largest shareholder in Terra Nova Solutions, was in his early 60s, with a sharp mind and a firm handshake. He chose to meet at an old-school diner, a place that felt a world away from the corporate boardrooms I expected. Chun tells me you're an interesting young man, Peterson said, sliding a cup of coffee toward me. A disowned heir starting an environmental company with a crew of homeless people. Does it sound ridiculous to you? I asked, taking the cup. No, it sounds admirable, he replied, his eyes studying me. To go through what you went through at your age and not break. To find a new path instead. That takes grit. I sorted scrap metal to pay for college. I looked at him surprised. Peterson smiled. Didn't see that coming, did you? I started this business from the back of a pickup truck. That's why your proposal resonated with me. But resonance isn't enough, Mr. Peterson, I said, putting my cup down. I need your support. You know Henderson is backing Metro Clean, don't you? Do. Then why should I back you? Peterson's gaze was piercing. Because helping me helps you, I said, meeting his eyes. Henderson's influence on the board is growing. If you help establish a new, independent partner, it weakens Metro Clean's position and strengthens yours. And if our model succeeds, it becomes a major win for you personally. Peterson laughed, a genuine, deep laugh this time. Ethan, the Reeds are blind fools. To let talent like you walk out the door. Incredible. He pulled a folder from his briefcase. This is the file for a small subsidiary of Terra Nova. It's been losing money for years. I own a controlling stake personally. If you want, you can use this company's legal identity for your bid. That solves your credentials problem. Why are you helping me this much? I asked, bewildered. 3 reasons, Peterson said, holding up his fingers. First, I genuinely believe in your model. Second, I can't stand Henderson's good old boy way of doing business. And third, he paused. Let's just say your adoptive father and I have some old history. That was unexpected. What kind of history? Business is business. You don't need the details. Peterson waved it off. All you need to know is that I would find it very satisfying to see the Reeds' fake heir outmaneuver their real one. Leaving the diner, my head was spinning. I had stumbled into a much larger corporate power struggle. But there was no turning back now. Back at the warehouse, I explained the new situation to the team. So we're a real company now? Maya's eyes lit up. We are. A shell company, but it's legitimate. I confirmed. We have 3 days to redraft the entire proposal under the new name. Can we do it? Mitch asked. We have to, I said, opening my laptop. Nobody's sleeping tonight. For the next 72 hours, we worked like a machine. I rewrote the proposal, incorporating the resources of Peterson's subsidiary. Mitch and Brenda compiled our latest operational data. Leo and Maya created a whole new presentation. Pops ran for coffee and tracked down rumors. At 4 a.m. on the 3rd day, I finished the final edit. My hand was shaking as I clicked submit. The bid was in. All we could do now was wait. Chapter 8, the day before the results were announced, disaster struck. Someone trashed our neighborhood collection point. The pickup truck was overturned, sorted recyclables were strewn everywhere, and our industrial scale was smashed to pieces. Leo and Maya were there when it happened and were nearly assaulted. It was a couple of thugs, Maya said, her voice trembling, a fresh scrape on her cheek. They said we were on their turf. Mitch slammed his fist against the wall. I bet it was Metro Clean. Or the Reeds, Brenda added. I inspected the damage, a cold fire burning in my gut. But it was the fire of focus, not rage. Did you call the police? We did. They said they'd look into it, but Leo trailed off. We all knew what he meant. People like us were not a high priority. Let's get this cleaned up, I said, starting to write one of the overturned sorting bins. That's it, Ethan. We just take it. Mitch asked, his voice raw with frustration. Of course not, I said, looking up. But we don't have time for a street fight right now. The announcement is tomorrow. That's the main event. We'll deal with this later. We spent the morning cleaning up the mess. In the afternoon, I went to Terra Nova to see David Chun. We're going to need security, I told him bluntly. If we win a contract, this will happen again. Chun frowned. They're being that blatant? Competition can be ugly, I said, especially when your opponent thinks you're an easy target. I'll make the arrangements, Chun promised. But only if you win. We'll win, I said, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. But walking out of the Terra Nova Tower, I wasn't so sure. The announcement was scheduled for 10 a.m. the next day. I told the whole team to be there, dressed in the cleanest clothes they had. Win or lose, we would see this through with dignity. That night, I had a dream. I was back in the Kenilworth mansion, but everyone was walking right through me like I was a ghost. I called out to my parents, but they just smiled and walked past me toward Caleb. At the end of the dream, Caleb turned and looked right at me. You were never really here, he said with a smile. I woke up in a cold sweat. It was 3 a.m. Sleep was impossible. I opened my phone and a news alert popped up. Reed Properties announces major investment in Metro Clean Industries, entering environmental sector. I clicked the link. The Reeds were officially partnering with Metro Clean to create a premium, vertically integrated waste management service. The article featured a photo of Robert, Eleanor, and Caleb, all smiling and shaking hands. The comments were full of praise for the Reeds' forward-thinking business strategy. No one knew their new partner was using thugs to smash up the competition. I turned off my phone and walked to the window of the warehouse. The sky was beginning to lighten. A new day was starting, and today it would decide our fate. Chapter 9, the room for the announcement, was even more crowded this time. In addition to the bidders, several media outlets were present. This project was a bigger deal than I'd realized. Caleb was there, sitting with the Metro Clean team, looking like he owned the place. When he saw me, he raised his eyebrows and mouthed the words, "You lose." I looked away. At 9:50 a.m., the committee filed in. The chairman was the same, but there were a few new faces on the panel. Mr. Peterson was among them. He gave me a subtle nod. At 10 a.m. sharp, the proceedings began. It was a formal process. First, the bid prices were announced, followed by the technical scores. Metro Clean had the lowest price and the highest technical score. Our company, now named Phoenix Recycling, had a mid-range price and the second highest score. Hearing this, a triumphant smirk spread across Caleb's face. But then, the chairman announced the third and final scoring category, social value. This project is not solely about economic efficiency. It is also about social and environmental impact, the chairman said, adjusting his glasses. In this category, one bidder scored significantly higher than the rest. He paused for effect. Phoenix Recycling, with a score of 96. A murmur went through the room. The Metro Clean representative shot to his feet. That's absurd. How can you even quantify social value? We have a detailed scoring rubric, the chairman replied calmly. Phoenix's proposed homeless to hired program and their community environmental education network demonstrated profound social innovation. Therefore, based on the combined scores from all three categories, the winner of the contract is... Everyone held their breath. Phoenix Recycling. A scattering of applause broke out. The faces of the Metro Clean team were thunderous. Caleb stood up and stormed out of the room without a word. Mr. Peterson gave me a thumbs up. David Chun walked over and extended his hand. Congratulations, Ethan. Now the real work begins. The contract signing was set for 3 p.m. We had a small celebration back at the warehouse. Pops produced a bottle of cheap whiskey, and we all took a celebratory swig. We really did it, Brenda asked, still in disbelief. We really did, I said with a smile. But this is just the beginning. The real challenges are ahead. So what? Mitch boomed, slapping the table. We've slept under a highway. What's tougher than that? The signing went smoothly that afternoon. Terra Nova would provide equipment, vehicles, and a $500,000 startup fund. We would run the operation and share the profits. The contract was for 3 years. Afterward, David Chun walked us out. Ethan, I have to warn you, he said seriously. Metro Clean won't take this lying down, and neither will the Reeds. I know. Also, he lowered his voice, this whole Metro Clean investment was Caleb's idea. He's trying to crush you in this sector to prove himself. I nodded. Let him try. On the way back, we bought some pizza and beer to celebrate properly. But when we got to the warehouse, we all froze. The door was wide open. The inside was a disaster. Our laptops were smashed, papers were scattered everywhere. And spray painted on the wall in big red letters was a single message: "Get out, trash." Maya burst into tears. Leo was shaking with rage. Mitch silently squatted down, picking up the torn shreds of our data sheets. I looked at the scene, and a strange thing happened. I started to laugh. It was a wild, almost unhinged sound that made the others look at me with concern. Ethan, are you okay? Brenda asked cautiously. I'm great, I said, wiping a tear of laughter from my eye. I'm really great. The more they do this, the more it proves one thing. They're scared of us. They're terrified that a bunch of people they threw away might actually make it. I stood in the center of the ruined space and looked at my team. Right now, there are people who want to see us fail. So what are we going to do about it? Mitch stood up. We fight back. Damn right, Pops exclaimed. more animated than I'd ever seen him. We take the fight to them. Then that's what we do, I said, clenching my fists. Starting tomorrow, we are not homeless. We are not forgotten. We are the founding team of Phoenix Recycling. And we're going to show this entire city how the discarded can build an empire. We cleaned up the mess until dawn. No one complained. No one thought of quitting, because we all knew that the war had just begun. Chapter 10 news of our win spread quickly. On the third morning, an unexpected visitor appeared at the warehouse. My adoptive mother, Eleanor Reed. She stood at the entrance, dressed in a Chanel suit that looked completely out of place against the backdrop of industrial shelving and bundled recyclables. She clutched a designer paper bag, her expression a mixture of pity and anxiety. Ethan, the familiar name sent a jolt through me, but I quickly composed myself. Mrs. Reed, can I help you? My formal tone clearly stung her. A flash of pain crossed her face. Can we talk? I glanced at my team, who were busy working, and nodded. We walked to an empty spot outside. Eleanor held out the bag. It's that lemon tart you like. From that little bakery in Lincoln Park. I didn't take it. No, thank you. Eleanor's hand faltered, the bag hanging awkwardly in the air. Ethan, I know you hate us. I don't hate you, I said calmly. We're just not connected anymore. Is blood really that important? I asked. Does an 18-year relationship mean nothing? Her eyes welled up. I'm so sorry. At the time, Caleb had suffered so much. You just chose to compensate him by sacrificing me. I finished for her. I understand the choice. I just don't accept it. Silence stretched between us, broken only by the sound of Mitch shouting loading instructions in the distance. Do you really have to do this? Eleanor finally asked, getting to her point. Waste management. It's not a respectable business for someone like you. I'm not a Reed. I corrected her. I'm Ethan Vance, the CEO of Phoenix Recycling, and there's nothing dishonorable about this work. Eleanor bit her lip. Caleb said you used some kind of trick to win the contract. I laughed. Of course he did. Mrs. Reed, do you know who works for me? A man disabled and abandoned by his employer. A woman who escaped domestic violence. Kids from the country who were cheated out of their savings. An old man whose children threw him away. We're trying to earn a living with our own two hands. What's wrong with that? She was speechless. If there's nothing else, I have to get back to work. I turned to leave. Wait. She grabbed my sleeve. If you wanted to come back, I could. You could what? I turned back. Ask Caleb to move out? Have us all live together under one roof? Eleanor couldn't answer. I knew the truth. The Reeds had chosen blood. There was no going back. Just as I had chosen this path. There was no going back for me, either. Take care of yourself, I said, pulling my arm free and walking back into the warehouse. I could hear her quiet sobs behind me, but I didn't turn around. Some doors, once closed, can never be reopened. Chapter 11 of resources from Terra Nova arrived quickly. 3 custom-fitted recycling trucks, 10 sets of sorting machinery, and a warehouse full of supplies. David Chen sent a young engineer named Kevin to help us get set up. The operation is straightforward, but maintenance is key, Kevin explained, demonstrating a conveyor belt. Clean it daily, check the parts weekly. Mitch was the most diligent student, his notebook quickly filling with detailed notes. Brenda trained a group of newly hired women on the complex sorting standards. Leo and Maya became our community liaisons, going door to door to explain our services. And Pops, using his network of street contacts, created an intelligence agency that mapped the city's waste flow patterns. After the first month, we turned a small profit. It wasn't much, but it was enough to pay everyone a salary of $800. Payday was a celebration. I can pay for my daughter's school supplies, Brenda said, clutching the cash, tears streaming down her face. Leo and Maya started looking for a small apartment. Pops bought a whole carton of cigarettes and handed them out like a proud father. Mitch held his pay, silent for a long moment. This is the first money I've earned since my accident, he said, his voice thick with emotion. In the second month, we expanded our service area. We hired 15 new employees, all of them formerly homeless. Mr. Peterson paid us a visit and was clearly impressed. Better than I ever expected, he said, clapping me on the shoulder. But get ready. The real test is coming. He was right. Metro Clean, backed by the Reeds, launched a price war. They started offering 20% more for recyclables, siphoning off our customers. At the same time, rumors started spreading in the neighborhoods we served. They said we were a front, selling materials to unregulated dumps that polluted the environment. They said we were exploiting the homeless, paying them under the table to avoid taxes. Then, things got violent. 2 of our employees were jumped after their shift. They told us to quit, or they'd break our legs. One of them said a nasty bruise blooming on his cheek. Team morale plummeted. Maybe we should raise our prices too. Brenda asked nervously. We can't, I said, shaking my head. We don't have the capital. We can't win a price war. So we just watch them steal our business? Mitch growled. We need to change the game, I said, walking over to a whiteboard. Metro Clean is competing on price. We'll compete on service. Starting tomorrow, we're launching a free at-home pickup service. People can schedule a pickup by phone. We'll also create a customer loyalty program. They earn points they can redeem for household goods. And Kevin, I said, turning to the young engineer, can you install digital scales on our trucks that print a receipt on the spot? Kevin thought for a moment. It's possible. It'll take some time to retrofit. Do it as fast as you can. Then I turned to Leo and Maya. You two organize community open house days. Invite residents to tour our facility. Show them we have nothing to hide. Pops, find out exactly who is spreading these rumors. Mitch, hire a few big guys for security. The orders galvanized the team back into action. But I knew this was just a stopgap. To survive, we needed a more fundamental breakthrough. Chapter 12, the smear campaign, was more organized than we realized. Pops confirmed that Metro Clean had hired a handful of people to spread disinformation in our service areas. Worse, they were using their political connections to block us. Our applications for permanent community drop-off sites were indefinitely stalled. City Hall says the permits are under review, Leo reported, dejected. I asked a friend, Pops said in a low voice. Someone high up at the Department of Streets and Sanitation put a hold on them, a guy named Henderson. Commissioner Henderson is an old friend of the Reed family, David Shun confirmed over the phone. Caleb is using his father's connections to strangle us. They're trying to bleed us dry, Mitch said, chain smoking in the corner. The mood in the warehouse was bleak. Rain drummed against the metal roof. I suddenly remembered a lecture from Kellogg. My professor had said, when a frontal assault fails, you attack the flank. When the rules of the game work against you, you change the game itself. An idea began to form. What if we don't need permanent collection sites? I said aloud. Everyone looked at me. What do you mean? Mobile collection hubs. I explained, walking to a map of the city. We have 3 trucks. We could design routes and schedules, showing up in different neighborhoods at specific times. Like a bus route, but for recycling. Kevin's eyes lit up. We could put GPS trackers on the trucks. Residents could see their location in real time on a smartphone app. Exactly. I was getting more excited as I spoke. We can add a feature where they can request a pickup directly through the app. But the fuel and labor costs will be much higher, Brenda pointed out. In the short term, yes, I admitted. But in the long term, we build a direct, powerful connection with our customers. We're no longer dependent on city permits. We're agile. And it's a service Metro Clean can't easily replicate. We moved immediately. Kevin worked day and night to retrofit the trucks and build a simple app. Leo and Maya began a grassroots campaign to inform residents about the new recycling on demand service. Mitch planned the routes to maximize efficiency. A week later, we launched. The first day, we only had a handful of app-based pickups. The second day, a few more. By the third day, a woman from a neighborhood Facebook group posted a glowing review about our convenient service and honest weights. The momentum started to build. At the same time, I made another bold move. I called a few local news reporters and invited them to our facility. At first, none were interested. Then I gave them the headline. The tycoon's cast-off son, building a recycling empire with the city's homeless. That got their attention. A reporter and a camera crew showed up. I told them our story calmly, without melodrama or begging for sympathy. We just want to prove that everyone deserves a dignified way to make a living, I said on camera. This company is about recycling materials, but it's also about recycling lives. The story aired that night. The public response was overwhelming. Downloads of the Phoenix Recycling app surged. We were booked solid for a week. More importantly, the positive media attention put pressure on City Hall. Suddenly, our permits were no longer under review. Mr. Peterson called me. "You've got a real talent for this, kid," he said with a chuckle. "Commissioner Henderson has backed off. Says he'll follow standard procedure from now on." "Thank you, Mr. Peterson." "Don't thank me. You earned it," he said. Then his tone grew serious. "But be ready. The Reeds will be coming up with a new plan to shut you down." "I'm counting on it," I said. Chapter 13. The Reeds' next move was more ruthless than I could have imagined. They acquired the largest landfill operator in the state. Then they announced that, effective immediately, their facilities would no longer accept waste from Phoenix Recycling. It was a death blow. It meant all the non-recyclable waste we collected had nowhere to go. "He's cutting off our air supply," Mitch said, his face grim. "If the waste piled up, the health department would shut us down within days." To make matters worse, Metro Clean began poaching our employees, promising better pay and stability as soon as Phoenix went under. "They're trying to gut us from the inside out," Brenda said, her voice filled with worry. She was right. I could see the fear in our team's eyes. 2 of our newest hires quit. "Sorry, Ethan. We've got families to feed," they said, unable to look at me. I understood, but I couldn't accept defeat. "Anyone who wants to leave can go now. No questions asked," I announced at an all-hands meeting. "For those who stay, we figure this out together." In the end, 5 of our 15 new employees left. The rest of us sat in a quiet warehouse, the air thick with despair. "Maybe we could buy our own landfill," Maya suggested meekly. "With what money?" Leo replied with a bitter laugh. Kevin, the quiet engineer, suddenly spoke up. "Why does it have to be a landfill?" We all turned to look at him. "What if we could radically reduce the amount of non-recyclable waste we generate in the first place?" he asked, pushing up his glasses. "We could launch a composting program for food scraps, turning them into organic fertilizer. Things like diapers and sanitary products. There's technology to convert them into high-energy fuel pellets. And plastics. If we could sort them with even higher precision, many types that are currently considered trash could be sold for reuse." He was getting more animated as he spoke. "We're not trapped. We're just thinking too small." His words were like a searchlight cutting through the fog. For the next 3 days, we worked furiously. Kevin researched the technology, and I reached out to potential partners in advanced manufacturing. Mitch and Brenda focused on keeping the daily operations running, reassuring our customers. The breakthrough came on the 4th day. An innovative green tech firm from out of state contacted us. They specialized in turning waste into resources and needed a steady supply of raw materials. "We saw your story on the news. We were inspired," the CEO told me over video call. "If you can provide us with pre-sorted waste streams, we'll take everything you've got." The deal was straightforward. We supply the materials, they handle the conversion. We split the profits. Most importantly, it gave us a way to completely bypass the local landfill monopoly. Robert Reed could control Illinois, but he couldn't control the entire country. On the day we signed the contract, Caleb showed up again. He stood outside the warehouse, his face a mask of cold fury. "You think you've won?" he sneered. "I'm not trying to win," I replied calmly. "I'm just trying to survive. To build something for these people." "You'll never get it, Ethan," Caleb said, stepping closer. "There are some things you can't earn with hard work. Like a bloodline. Like a name. No matter what you build, you'll always be the fake. The cast-off." The words were meant to wound. 3 months ago, they would have shattered me. But now I just smiled. "You know, Caleb, at Kellogg they taught us what makes a true entrepreneur. It's not the resources you start with. It's the ability to create opportunity out of nothing. To build something from the wreckage. And in that class, you would have failed." Caleb's face went white. He turned and left without another word. Watching him go, I felt a strange sense of pity. He had everything he thought he wanted. The name, the inheritance, the parents' love. But he lived in constant fear of me, the ghost he couldn't exorcise. I had started with nothing. And because of that, I had nothing to fear. That perhaps was the biggest difference between us. Chapter 14. After securing the partnership, Phoenix Recycling entered a period of explosive growth. We were no longer just a collection service. We were a resource management company. Our composting program was a huge success in 3 pilot neighborhoods. with residents eagerly trading food scraps for bags of rich organic fertilizer. We sold finely sorted plastics to specialized manufacturers and even found a company that turned our collected textiles into industrial cleaning cloths. 6 months later, we were consistently profitable. Our team grew to 50 employees, every one of them hired from the margins of society. We moved into a much larger facility, a proper state-of-the-art sorting center. On payday, I gave everyone a bonus. Brenda held the thick envelope, her hands shaking. I can enroll my daughter in that private art class she's been dreaming of, she whispered. Mitch used his bonus as a down payment on a used truck to help him manage our expanding logistics. Pops bought a carton of premium cigarettes. Been smoking garbage my whole life. Time for an upgrade, he declared. Leo and Maya put a security deposit on a one-bedroom apartment. They finally had a home of their own. Kevin officially joined our company as the Chief Technology Officer. David Chun from Terra Nova sent new business our way constantly. And Mr. Peterson, after a heated board meeting, convinced Terra Nova to double their investment in our operation. Everything was moving in the right direction. Then, one afternoon, Robert Reed came to visit. He looked years older. His hair was almost completely white. He stood at the entrance to our bustling sorting center, his expression unreadable. Ethan, can we talk? I took him to my office. It was small and simple, but it was mine. You've done well, he said, his voice raspy. Thank you, I replied, pouring him a glass of water. Caleb, he's not adjusting well, Robert said, wringing his hands. He's making mistakes at the company, alienating partners. Your mother worries about him constantly. I said nothing. We may have been wrong, he finally admitted, looking up at me, his eyes bloodshot. Blood is important, but 18 years is important too. We were too harsh. We hurt you. I listened quietly. Would you be willing to come home for a visit? He asked. Your mother misses you terribly. I looked out the window at the controlled chaos of the sorting floor. I could hear Mitch's booming voice, Brenda's laughter, Pop's familiar cough. This was my home now. Mr. Reed, I said, turning back to him. The home I once had disappeared the day you showed me the door. My home is here now. His face fell. He opened his mouth to say something, then just sighed. As he was leaving, he paused at the door. The deal with Metro Clean. It's fallen apart. The company is under investigation for fraud and environmental violations. The money Reed Properties invested. We're not going to get it back. Was it karma? I didn't know. Take care of yourself, I said. He nodded and walked away, his shoulders slumped. That night, the team went out for dinner to celebrate hitting our quarterly targets. The restaurant was loud and chaotic and perfect. Mitch, a few beers in, slung his arm around my shoulder. Ethan, you're the man, he roared, raising his glass. Brenda kept piling food onto my plate. You need to eat more. You're too thin. Leo and Maya were planning their wedding and asked me to be the best man. Pops was humming to himself, happy in the corner. Kevin was sketching a new machine design on a napkin. I looked around at all of them, my heart full. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This isn't over, Ethan. I will not lose to you. It was Caleb. I deleted the message without replying. Outside, the city lights glittered. A world of skyscrapers, family dynasties, and bitter rivalries. But in here was my world. My team, my purpose, my family. I was once a prince who fell from his tower into the mud. But in that mud, I had grown something new. It wasn't a rare or delicate flower. It was tough, resilient, and it could not be broken by the storm. And I knew the fight was far from over. Metro Clean was wounded but not dead. The Reeds were regretful but not redeemed. Caleb was defeated but not surrendered. There were more challenges ahead, but I was no longer afraid because I had learned that true strength isn't about how you handle success. It's about what you build when you have nothing left to lose. The Trash King of Chicago? I kind of like the sound of that. I raised my glass. To Phoenix. To us. And to the future. Everyone raised their glasses. To the future. The cheer was loud, and it was full of hope. The night was long, and the road ahead was longer. But the stars were out, and they were lighting the way. Chapter 15, another 3 months passed. Phoenix Recycling expanded its operations to 3 neighboring cities. We restructured as the Phoenix Group, and I became a chairman. Mitch was our chief operating officer, and Brenda was the director of human resources. Pops officially retired, but still came by the facility every week, claiming he'd get bored otherwise. Kevin's R&D team developed a new generation of AI-powered sorting machines, and the patents were pending. Leo and Maya got married. I gave the best man speech at their wedding. I still heard news about the Reed from time to time. Metro Clean was forced into bankruptcy after a massive federal investigation. Caleb's investment failure had made him a pariah within the family. Robert Reed's health was declining, and Reed property stock was in a steady slump. Eleanor sent gifts through a mutual acquaintance a few times. I accepted them, but never responded. Some cracks can never be repaired. That fall, Kellogg invited me back to be a guest speaker. I stood in the same auditorium where I had once been a student, looking out at a sea of young, ambitious faces. My old faculty advisor sat in the front row, beaming. 3 years ago, I sat where you're sitting now, I said into the microphone. Back then, I thought business was about balance sheets, acquisitions, and IPOs. I've since learned that business can also be about dignity, hope, and second chances. I told them our story. From being thrown out of my home to that first night onto the expressway. From one rented pickup truck to a multi-city corporation. From a team of 5 to a workforce of 500. Some people have called me a business prodigy, I said, pausing. But I believe true genius isn't measured by profit margins. It's measured by your ability to see hope in a hopeless situation. It's the will to build a skyscraper on a foundation of rubble. When I finished, the applause was deafening. My advisor came up on stage and gave me a powerful hug. Ethan, he said, you are the living embodiment of what education is supposed to be. It's not about teaching you how to succeed as part of the elite. It's about teaching you how to live a meaningful life, even when you're cast out of it. That night, I received a text message from Caleb. It was just 2 words, I'm sorry. I didn't reply. It wasn't about forgiveness. It was about acknowledging that we were on paths that could never cross again. In December, the Phoenix Group went public on the NASDAQ. On the day of the IPO, the entire founding team was with me on the trading floor. Mitch wore a suit, constantly fidgeting with his tie. Brenda had her makeup done, but her eyes were still misty with tears. Pops had gotten a gold tooth for the occasion, which glinted every time he grinned. Kevin clutched a roll of blueprints like it was his child. Leo and Maya held hands. She was now visibly pregnant. When the opening bell rang, I looked at them all, my own eyes burning. From a homeless encampment to a publicly traded company. It took us 2 years. 730 days of sweat, tears, and sometimes blood. But more than that, it was 730 days of grit, faith, and a stubborn refusal to give up. At the celebration party, Robert Reed arrived. He was in a wheelchair, pushed by a nurse. Ethan, congratulations, he said, holding out a trembling hand. I took it. The hand that had taught me to write, to throw a baseball, to sign a contract, was now frail and thin. You should take care of your health, sir, I said. Caleb, he went abroad, Robert said. He said he was too ashamed to face you. That's probably for the best. Ethan, if you could do it all over again, what would you choose? He asked. I thought for a moment. I would choose this path again. Why? Because this path taught me that a real family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who stand with you in the storm, who refuse to let you go, who become your light in the darkness. Robert was silent. As he left, his silhouette looked small and frail. The party continued around me. Partners, investors, and reporters all wanted a moment of my time. I stood in the center of it all, smiling and accepting congratulations. But I knew that this all began on a rainy night, under a cold, concrete overpass. It began with 5 strangers who were willing to bet their last hope on a disgraced rich kid. Late that night, I went up to the rooftop of our new headquarters. I looked down at the sprawling lights of a city that had once cast me out. Now, my name was on one of its buildings. I had built my own legend here. My phone rang. It was Brenda. Ethan, where are you? We're all waiting to cut the cake. Be right there, I said. I took one last look at the night sky. The stars were brilliant, like the future of every person who worked for this company. Walking toward the elevator, I passed a young man in a cheap, ill-fitting suit. He was nervously clutching a resume. His eyes lit up when he saw me. Mr. Vance? I nodded. I have an interview here tomorrow, he said, his voice a mix of awe and anxiety. I graduated from Kellogg too. but I haven't had much luck finding a job. I want to work for Phoenix. I want to be like you. Good luck with your interview, I said, patting his shoulder. And remember, your degree doesn't matter. Your past doesn't matter. All that matters is whether you believe you can create your own miracle. The elevator doors opened to the sound of laughter and music. My team, my family, was waiting for me. Mitch handed me a glass of champagne. Mr. Chairman, say a few words. I took the glass and stepped onto a small stage, looking at all the familiar faces. 2 years ago, someone told me to go back to the gutter where I belonged. I began. Today, I want to say that the gutter isn't just a place for the lost. It could be a starting point for people who want to change the world. So here's to change. Here's to the world. And here's to us. Everyone raised their glass. To US. The roar was deafening. It was our voice. The voice of the underestimated, the unbroken, the unyielding. The voice of every soul that has ever had to find its own light in the dark. The future was still a long road. But we were not afraid, because we had proven that even from the lowest point on Earth, you can still reach the stars. End of novel.